Before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick favour. If you're getting value from any of our podcasts, and I genuinely hope you are, could you take just 30 seconds right now and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify? It sounds like a small thing, but a rating would make a huge difference, and it'll take less time than pouring a cup of coffee. G'day. Welcome to the AgriCoach podcast for families on the land who want to grow their family's wealth and prosperity across the generations. I'm your host, Ben Law, and I'm the financial bloke. G'day. Welcome back to the Wealth and Wisdom podcast. I'm Ben Law, and I'm the financial bloke. Every now and then, I get to do something on this podcast that I genuinely love. I get to sit down with someone I know really well, whose family I've had the privilege of working alongside, and have the kind of conversation that usually only happens around the kitchen table. Today is one of those episodes. Kara Knudsen is the CEO of Knudsen Cattle, a Queensland beef operation she and her husband Darcy have built into something genuinely impressive. Darcy is a third-generation grazier, and Kara grew up just down the road. She married the boy next door. And now they're thick in one of the most exciting and challenging chapters any farming family faces, driving the business hard while starting to include the next generation in the running of the business. I've been working with Kara and her family for a number of years now, and I can tell you firsthand, this is a family that takes growing and preparing the family for the ultimate succession seriously. They're doing the work on alignment, on clarity, on making sure that when Kara and Darcy eventually step back, the business is structured so if Tom and Jack want leadership roles or not, the foundation is solid. In 2013, Kara was awarded a Nuffield Australia Scholarship and spent time travelling the world to Argentina, Uruguay and Canada, researching cattle genetics and reproductive technology. She came back a different person and a better leader. She now sits on the board of Nuffield Australia as a director, helping the next generation of agricultural leaders access the same opportunity that changed her trajectory. And that's exactly what I want to dig in today. What it actually means to invest in the next generation, what that investment does to a person, and why if you have a son or daughter or staff that are serious about agriculture, this might be one of the most important episodes you'll listen to yet. So Kara, without further delay, it's great to finally have you on the show.
Thanks, Ben. I'm very excited to be here. We've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, it's been almost a couple of years now, hasn't it, since we first started talking about doing it?
It has, and we've been down a lot of roads and a lot of conversations, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the next hour.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So, righto, Kara. First thing is I want to start with your family story because I think that the context of this discussion is really important. So can you just give everyone that's listening a picture of, say, where the business has come from, where it is now, and what the next chapter looks like as you start to expand and Tom and Jack, the next generation, start to be involved in things?
Thanks, Ben. Well, I guess our story, or Darcy and Kara, which is now the Knudsen Cattle story, we really started very humbly and I think we came from pretty courageous sort of beginnings. Darcy and I both grew up in family agricultural businesses, pretty traditional in many ways and not that far from each other. We were almost neighbours, not quite, but I married the boy next door, so to speak, and moved down the road.
Yeah.
We both came from families that had really forged ahead in their own rights, and they were pioneers in many ways. And they lived pretty tough in the early days, but they were very innovative and very adaptive. And that's, I guess, where Darcy and I were both brought up in that kind of environment. And that led the way to what it is today. But we married 24 years ago and we followed the family footsteps and we entered into the family businesses. We eventually decided to strike out on our own and we earned our leave ticket in 2011.
Wow, it seems a lot longer than that.
It does. We always had our own business, but we really struck out altogether on our own from 2011. And we couldn't have done that without assistance from our respective families. They really did make it possible in the early days to be on our own. But being on our own meant we made all our own decisions, we made our own mistakes, and we felt very grown up at that stage. We had a very focused vision. We knew what we wanted, and we were very much about going out and grabbing it and having a go. Tom and Jack, they came along in 2005 and 2009. We kind of kept growing. We made a few mistakes. We would go backwards a bit, then we'd go forwards, and there was some really tough times in there as well, particularly when it didn't go our way. We've had dry. We had the cattle markets crash. We had live export. Just the usual farmer worries, but they're just a lot bigger when you start starting out than they are as you progress and you have scale and you understand risk. Darcy, he could really keep that going throughout that time. He was probably the one that he didn't worry too much. He absolutely loved to work, and we kind of both had our own strengths. We knew we needed to continue to scale, and we built relationships, and then probably the last 5 years was about really good business management. We changed a lot of the way we manage our business. We just knew it was crucial to steering the ship. There was just no other way to keep doing what we were doing and continuing to grow and scale. So we worked on systems, we worked on management, we've worked on role clarity, and that's now given us the ability to adapt and be really innovative in today's business. Has been that growth and that scale.
And you're a sort of a foot flat to the floor type of girl, aren't you?
I am. And I think, unfortunately, Darcy and I are both foot flat to the floor kind of people. And we grew up in the first phase of our business was really kind of shoot from the hip.
And make mistakes quickly.
We got away with it. But we made a lot of mistakes doing that. And that was part of our journey, was learning those mistakes.
And in hindsight, it was good to go through those mistakes, I suppose.
Yes, looking back, where our business is now, having those tough times, being accountable to each other, 100% has made us very much, and we know our numbers, we understand the business, we understand what we're doing, and I don't think we would have done what we have done unless we had have taken on what we did and the risk that we did. And the failures, and we learned every time we failed, we learned something, we went back, and now we have a sort of a business motto is we fail often, but we try and fail small. So we give everything a go, but we try and minimise the failures nowadays rather than just going in 100% and having it fail on us.
Yep. And so if you hadn't have taken on some of those risks back in the day, though, you wouldn't be where you are today, would you?
No, we would definitely not. They are calculated risks that we took on. We're not risk averse, and I wouldn't say they weren't good decisions, but a lot of people would look at it and say, well, there's just too much risk there. Sometimes you just have to back yourself. Yep.
Well, that's the number one bit of advice that older people give their younger self is to back themselves. I know that's mine. And so talk me through young Tom and Jack. How old are they and where are they at now?
Tom is 20 and he's learning to fly. So he's into aviation very much so. He's at home as well. He's in the business. He's done some work in the business, but his passion at the moment is aviation and also technology. He's very, very much about tech, and he loves that space in terms of ag tech, drones and that kind of thing. Jack's just turned 17 and he is currently at home. He's done 2 years with us in this business, and he'll be gone on his own career and own journey once this year's over. He's very much passionate about agriculture, and there's no doubt he'll follow that path. Very good with people. He's got a lot of skills around logistics, and it'll be really interesting to watch the two of them grow into, great human beings in the community.
I already think they are pretty great human beings. They're completely different, but work really, really well together and have complementary skills, don't they?
They do complement one another most of the time. We have our usual sibling sort of scuffles and difficulties, but yeah, they look at things so differently that it is very complementary to us, and we've really had them involved in various levels of the business right through childhood, and that's come from my family. My parents really had us involved from an early age, and so we felt that was something that we could give to our children, was not necessarily a position back here, but an understanding of business and an understanding of agriculture and how to work.
and how to run a business, because that was the thing. Like I've met you guys 12 years ago, and I remember young Jack and Tom coming in the office, and they just sit there quietly in the corner, and you could just tell both of them were taking things in age appropriately, and you could see that education from how to run a proper business, etc., was really starting to be infused into them.
It's been really amazing to watch what they do take in, and because they're essentially coming at it often from a fresh look, the insights that you can actually get from them now is pretty cool. And I really value their strategic thinking when I'm trying to work out what I might do. I often talk to Tom and Jack about it, and they have very different insight because they're a completely different generation to us. And their values, while they're still similar in family, the next generation have a different insight into what is important to them.
So, Kara, you run things, as you said, you've really driven hard. You've got a business. Can you just sort of flesh out a little bit about where you're located, what sort of business it is, and who's who in the zoo, so to speak?
Yeah, Ben, we are based at Chinchilla, and we've got the 3 properties, not adjoining, but there's about 45,000 acres there, and we have a breeding operation and trading operation. And then our other position is up at Hewenden, and we have an aggregation up there of about 120,000 acres. We do have breeders there, but it's predominantly a trading operation, and we have very structured staff, and we have opportunities there for growth in those areas. And we have a management team and a senior management team, both in the office and on site here. We've just, moved to a general manager who's been an addition just recently, and that is about growing and scaling the business and ensuring that we've got a sustainable business. We're here for the long haul, and we're moving away from just being reliant on family members. We're really, we can bring in some fantastic expertise from outside, and if they're better at the job than I am, fantastic. We love to have them here.
The way we've always talked about it, Kara, with yourself, is you're building an agribusiness that family will own, but then there's opportunities for family to come back into that business and fill roles, but they've got to be the right people, have the right skills, etc. Does that sort of explain it well?
Yes, it does. And when you change your mindset to think about it quite like that, it opens up opportunities for the business itself, but it also opens up opportunities for Tom and Jack. So rather than just the inherited traditional role of a leadership role within the business, they have to come into where there's competencies, where their role might most likely suit in terms of their expertise or their passion, rather than an expected role. And I think that's really, for us, that's been an important learning curve and a journey for both us, and also explaining that to Tom and Jack, who are entirely on board. But it's refreshing because they don't feel that they have to be back here. The business will run and operate without them, and that allows them to, spread their wings, bring back whatever they might like if they choose to come back, but the business will provide opportunities. But in the meantime, it has to be adaptable, it has to be innovative, and it has to be able to be run regardless of who is here.
Because they don't report to you, do they?
No, they don't report to me. They report to other staff, actually, yeah.
Yep.
And it's been an interesting journey, but they're entirely on board with it because it's actually better for them as well. And I think the skills that we bring in with other staff members really helps them grow better than I can, or better than Darcy can. If we bring these great guys in that have got all different skills, and Tom and Jack are learning off that, that's gold, absolute gold.
It's interesting, Kara. I was just reflecting when we were getting ready for this podcast, and when I first met you, I remember you came in the office and I said, so Kara, what's the big picture? What's the 10, 15, 20-year plan? And because we're basically the same age, and I remember you told me the number, and it was 7 times the scale of where you were right there and then. And I remember writing it down and going, yep, no, that's fine. And I think most people would have gone, you're crazy. But you've focused on that, and you're pretty much on the right trajectory, aren't you?
Yes, we are. We've had some ups and downs, and I think it's really careful that you don't. We've certainly had a vision, but sometimes that vision has to move and adapt with it. And as long as you're moving forward, if you just focus on the one vision and then you lose sight in the rear vision or the side mirrors because you're so focused on that.
Of the nuances.
But yes, if you look on terms of the numbers, we're very close to what our goals were, but we've probably actually taken on some other opportunities throughout that time that have been really, really fun as well and challenging.
Yep. And that leads us into what we sort of want to talk about today, which is, you have the idea of we're creating this agribusiness, as I previously said, and then there's leadership opportunities for staff that come into the business. There's opportunities for Jack and Tom if they want to take on a role in the business other than an owner later on down the track, as you and Darcy sort of step back when you get to that right time. And part of that is development. So do you like to sort of unpack how let's just use Jack and Tom because they're probably the most obvious. How are you developing those two? Because again, at 19 and 17, a lot of families would go, geez, that's really early. All you really want them to do is turn up for work and shut the gate after themselves. Is this a really important part of what you and Darcy are doing, Kara?
Yes, it's something we do think about daily is where are there opportunities for them to learn great business skills and great community skills. They're volunteering, for example, at a number of events as part of what we do as a family. That's our values and we try and instill that. We will help them with smaller projects. For example, Tom's helping with the yard building and ordering steel and understanding of those things. And I mean, he's doing a great job. And it was difficult at the start and it's still challenging. But he's, every time he goes to do it, he's learning about that. And I think that's really important. And it's probably not even just Tom and Jack. We actually just have that as part of our culture where we will probably give responsibilities sometimes to staff where we just go, well, if you want to have a go at it, we'll help you step up and we'll be here. And what do you need to support that role? And a little bit of it is just dumping them in the ocean and seeing if they can swim, but they are supported and we're there as a life support. And that works really well, and we've had so much fun over the summer here with the next generation of superstars in agriculture, and not just Tom and Jack. They just worked really well as a team, and the average age was 20, and it was just, it was so fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like this transition from being most families from like a benevolent dictator, it's my way or the highway, to sort of a steward. You've actually got to sacrifice speed and accuracy for development. And that's really hard for family businesses because I know you look at it and you go, well, I could do that myself and I could do it in half the time with half the mistakes. But you're actually setting yourself up for long-term failure because unless they learn those skills, they're not going to be as valuable to you later on down the track or to them, at least to themselves.
That's absolutely right, Ben. We slowed a lot down over the last few months because they were a really young crew and we supported them as much as we could. And, I mean, it was just amazing, the quality of the workmanship, what they were starting to think about at the end of the week, what they were already thinking about for the next week. And next time they'll know how to do that, and they wouldn't have if we stepped in and said, this is how you've got to do it.
No, I love that. Now, Kara, if we can go on to take our mind back, well, I'd like to say 10 years, but it's more than 10 years now, back to 2013. And I'd like you to sort of talk us through what was going on in your world when you applied for the Nuffield Scholarship back then. I mean, what I want to understand is what made you put your hand up? And honestly, was there any part of you that sort of wondered about leaving the property and the kids for that kind of journey, whether it was the right call? Like, take us back to then, Kara.
Well, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind at the time that this was going to happen. But how we started on the journey was really about trying to change the stars. And I had been to Beef 2012, Beef Australia 2012, and I was at that stage a young mother. I had 2 young children and I'm married to a farmer. We've got the usual patriarchal partnership, even though it's not like that in our partnership, but from the outside, the farmer's wife. We were very good at operating our business. I was very much involved in that, but I had absolutely no qualifications. I had chosen not to go to uni. And so business was not, even though I knew it and was very good at it, without qualifications, it was very difficult. I went looking for other opportunities to work outside the business. That's how it really started. And it was pretty obvious that I was kind of seen more as a liability and as a farmer's wife than what I could do and I had these children, and people thought, well, Darcy will never stay home and look after the kids, and how could she ever work? And I thought, right, well, I've just got to get credibility fast, and I do not have time for a university degree.
Challenge accepted.
And so I went online, and somehow, serendipitously, Nuffield came up in my browser search. I was really only 1 or 2 days off the cutoff for that year. I applied that day. I wrote the application. I had the whole thing in. I walked past Darcy in the hallway because we kind of don't necessarily discuss those things. I said, by the way, I'm applying for an overseas scholarship. I could be away for 3 months next year. Now, Darcy's very supportive, and he did not ever say no. He didn't ever query anything. He just said, sounds good, mate.
He wasn't listening, was he?
And we never discussed how we were going to manage children while I was away, how we were going to manage the farm.
Just made it happen.
I just decided I was going to do it. And there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that I needed that scholarship. I'm actually now friends with some of the scholars that were on that interview, that initial interview, and the words fierce and determined often come up, and probably a few other words when I was in that interview. But I wanted that scholarship so badly because I could see what it could do for me in terms of network and opportunity as a woman out there in 2012-13. And I look back on it now and I think, well, yeah, I've added so much value to industry, to our community. You know, our business has grown from strength to strength in that time, and a lot of it is back of what I've learned off Nuffield. So it was just that one decision, and somehow the faith that Nuffield put in me and my Nuffield investor, which was Meat and Livestock Australia at the time, it still amazes me that I was so lucky. Yeah, it was incredible.
So what did it actually do for you, Kara? Like, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what it is, but for you personally, how did things change?
Well, it was almost immediately. I had been awarded the scholarship, and I think only a few days later, and they'd been waiting for me to find out. But Meat and Livestock Australia rang and said, hey, we've got a job for you. And I did some ambassador work for them, talking to strangers in Martin's Place, actually, in Sydney. I had this whole farm set up, and they wanted a farmer who could answer any question. And at the time, the marketing agency said, there's no such thing, we'll have to get an actor.
They need someone fierce.
And the MLA guys that interviewed said, I think she can do it. And so from then on, it really just changed my exposure to policy. It changed my global outlook. It was entirely different over those 2 years. I really found I was very resilient. I found out I was a lot tougher, and I could see so much challenge in some of the places that I've been. And I came home and I thought, how lucky are we to be in Australia and farm? And sometimes we lose sight of that, but we have some of the greatest agricultural feats in the world. It's just incredible what we can do here, and we are at the top of our game. We are leading the way in what we are doing.
So it made your world bigger, did it?
It made my world bigger. It gave me a global perspective more so, and an understanding of what's out there and how to harness opportunity. I think some of the businesses that we got to go and see, and Nuffield really opens doors in terms of where you get to go. You don't necessarily get the glossy brochure at the front door. You get to go behind the scenes. So many kitchen tables I got to sit at that were huge businesses, impressive businesses that had started as family businesses. They'd often started in a crisis. They'd started where the industry had been deregulated, where they'd lost a significant family member. So often we were going broke was the story. And they all had the same few words, which was, we had to make a decision. And they'd probably been stuck. There was no traction in what they were doing. They couldn't move forward, and they knew they had to make a decision. It was either get out or do this. Yep. And so the crazy became possible. They had one last dish, what have they got to lose type businesses. And they'd make one good decision, they'd get another good decision, and they went from strength to strength. Most of those family businesses realised very quickly that they didn't want to go back to where they were. They never wanted to see that crisis again. They wanted to manage the risk. And to do that, they would have to get structure. They had to have systems. They had to have role clarity. A lot of them scaled up, had all the challenges of scaling up, which was what we were dealing with as well, and how they had moved through that process and brought people in, expertise from outside, whether that's consultants or additional staff. But they got very business-like, and they moved really from a family business to a family in business. That's been part of what we've worked on with our family and how we look at it, and not to get too caught up in the emotions of the business and the family connections. And as much as that is really hard to do, every time you can move back to a decision-making process that's based on data and is based on sound judgment, you are much more likely to make a better decision.
So simply, if someone was listening and said a family in business versus a family business sounds like the same thing, what's the difference?
I think a family business relies a lot on family labour, and they probably have a lot of emotion that goes with. There's not a lot of clarity. We're trying very hard, and it's not easy. I don't say we've actually managed it all the time, but we have the family and then we have the business, and the business runs quite separately now to how we are as a family.
But everyone's still working in the business though, aren't they?
They are currently. Our two children are this year, but normally Tom was away last year. He's going away again. They don't have to be here for it to operate. And that's the difference that I think growing up, we always relied on family labour and family to drive the business. And that's risky, because if something happens to one of us, then that's a real risk we're trying to move away from. So I think that's the difference, is just trying to remove the two and treat them differently.
It's just a different way of running it. It's more professionally run, mostly systems, processes, job descriptions, all those sorts of things.
It's a big mindset change for the owners. You've got to challenge yourself every day, because you do tend to go back to the traditional, you do tend to go back to the emotion, you do tend to go back to those things. So you have to keep resetting yourself as a business owner and an operator rather than as a family member in that position.
The farming families who get succession right don't stumble into it. They're thinking about it 5 or 10 years out, long before anyone's close to retiring. And they're quietly asking, how do we do this? Who can actually help us do it well? The High Performing Families Roadmap Workshop was built for exactly that family. We sold out 4 events in 2025, and in 2026, I've only got capacity to run 1. It's the 26th and 27th of August here on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Early bird pricing is available now, but it won't last long. If you're already thinking this way, now's the time to act. Grab your tickets at agricoach.com.au/take action. That's agricoach.com.au/take action. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So did you find when you came back, Kara, like I'm guessing I know the answer to this, but did you find yourself more motivated or tempered in your view? Because you said you were very fierce and very driven and motivated. Did it give you perspective on the world to be able to come back and go, hey, I need to rethink things here rather than just being a bull at the gate? Because I've been accused of bull at the gate Benny. But did you find it gave you more perspective, or it was just fuel for the fire?
Oh, I think it took me about another 10 years to get perspective. It gave me a realisation, yes, we can do this. We can do this. There'll be tough times. And I would often look at some of the businesses in my mind that were successful that I had sat with and it wasn't successful, and take those opportunities and those learnings. And I still use that today and think about how they pivoted and what they did when they had a crisis. And quite often the crises repeat themselves. Market access was everywhere. families, brothers splitting up, and health, they just come round again. So that's been it's been a good journey for me for the last 10 years, I guess, since I started with my Nuffield in 2013.
Because it's interesting. It sounds like it gave you more certainty that you were on the right path. You knew where you were going. You knew what you needed to do. It gave you far more clarity and certainty. Is that right?
Yes. It was as if there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and we definitely had the ability to turn it on if we wished. And a lot of clarity. I think we started to get clarity.
Because the one clarity that I've always got, Kara, as I got older, was the fact that, not everything you see out there is as easy as it looks. You see people out there that have succeeded and you go, wow, they've done so well. And what we don't realise is quite often there's a huge amount of pain that's had to come to cause the change. Like there's a significant effort. And someone said to me once, you'll either pay now or pay later. And usually if you pay later, it's going to be far more expensive. And so there's this pain that's come through. People just think it's just luck that people have got to where they are. But most of the stories, they're not like that.
No, they're not. And I actually had a little bit of a light bulb moment only just recently about discomfort. And we all talk about being in an uncomfortable situation, getting used to being uncomfortable. And for me, I love being uncomfortable. I love a challenge, but I love trying to get out of it. So I'm a troubleshooter. I try really hard. And it was actually another Nuffield scholar, Andy Clark, and he was talking to younger scholars and he said, don't be frightened to sit with that discomfort, to sit with that pain before you pull the trigger. Just pause. You don't have to have all the answers now. You have to challenge yourself with it because otherwise you're not going to get the traction. But it is okay to be sitting with that pain and discomfort. And I took away, that was only a few months ago, and I took that away and I went, yes, that is true. That is what we have to do. It doesn't mean we have to put up with it, but sometimes just pausing before we pivot is really valuable, particularly for personalities like mine that don't do that.
Yeah, well, I think what it does is give you, as we were talking about before, is the perspective. When you're in pain, you will do anything to get out of pain. Can you tell us actually what is a Nuffield scholarship? Like what's actually involved?
I think it's one of the greatest opportunities you can have in agriculture. But what it really is it is available and open to anyone in the agricultural space. And we do also take people that are in other businesses that service agriculture. So agronomy,
yep.
We have CSIRO fellowships. So there's an amazing collection of individuals that come through the application process. And we give you a bursary, but also a curated program to go out and study a topic that you're passionate about. And the wide variety of topics that you can study, and it's really about what your passion and what your knowledgeable and experience can be and what you can bring back to industry in your own community. There's 3 parts to our Australian program. The first bit, our scholars have just come back from the Contemporary Scholars Conference in Japan.
Ooh.
And they've met with about 80 or 90 scholars of their year from all over the globe. And they're talking about agriculture, both challenges, problems. They're looking at innovation and technology. And it's essentially peer-to-peer learning. And we know that farmers and we know that people learn best from other people that are like themselves. So farmer to farmer, trying to solve problems and sharing their knowledge. The second part of our program is the Global Focus program, and it's about 5 weeks. The scholars go throughout the world, about 4 or 5 different countries, just depending on which GFP they're on. And we have an itinerary that helps them understand the different countries in terms of agriculture. So a little bit of cultural stuff, but a lot about what's happening in farming over there, what's happening in policy and government and advocacy. And they will see farms and businesses from all sorts of different industries, not just their own industry. And that's where the value is, because you can discover so much when you go and look outside your own little sandbox. And the third part for Australian scholars is they do travel overseas with their own study topic and really look for, I guess, solutions and new ways and new thinking to their problem. Sometimes they don't answer it, but they become very much ingrained in that subject. And the idea is they bring that information back to their Australian cohort, their industry, their community. So we're building capacity at the same time in Australian agriculture and in the individual. And we, have Nuffield scholars now doing amazing things through research, through government organisations, through their own communities. And you have this lifelong commitment to Nuffield in a way. And it's this network of just really outstanding individuals that come together, and they really challenge what you are thinking about and what you're doing, and they are so positive about agriculture and so passionate about it that they just love to solve problems, and there's no doomsday in the Nuffield network.
Yeah, yep. So, Kara, if I'm let's put inverted commas, a younger person, I'm the next generation coming through, I'm driven, I'm motivated, I may be working in agriculture for someone, or I'm a next generation looking at coming back to a farming operation. Pitch it to me. Like, why should I do Nuffield? What's in it for me? What am I going to get? And how could this be a game changer for me?
I think if you want to be at the top of your industry in terms of a farming business, then Nuffield, you are surrounding yourself with the best people in terms of farming operations that also are involved with Nuffield. And we know that if we're surrounding ourselves with that type of people and that positivity, we know that it rubs off. So I think if you are passionate and you are curious, then I find for me, this is my tribe. This is people that don't necessarily think the same way as me, but they challenge what I'm thinking about and are looking for solutions to problems. So I like being involved with the network, and giving back certainly gives you another avenue to sort of give back to your organisation, your community, and, try and change agriculture for the next generation for the better.
And also, I'm guessing, tribe for me, is one of the most important things. I look at agriculture, there's quite often a lot of negative people that aren't as driven and motivated. And quite often I find potential high performers or people that are going to do exceptionally well in the industry can feel a little bit lonely and saying, I just haven't been able to find my people. And so I see that as a really big opportunity. And one thing that you've really dragged out of this, Kara, is having that peer-to-peer learning, the tribe, the people around you. And you know what they say, a rising tide lifts all ships. I think in that case, to be surrounded by other rock stars is obviously a much better scenario than puddling around in the bloody chook pen, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And look, I did mine in 2013, and then I'm still involved, and I see the new crop of scholars coming through, and they have a new set of ideas, a new set of challenges. They've got new study topics that often the same study topics come around every 10 years and we have a different look at them. But that keeps us really current as farmers to understand what they're seeing overseas, where they're seeing the opportunity. I don't often see that in a normal industry group or other places that I go that are probably quite leading the charge, like a group of Nuffields on a global focus program.
It's interesting. There's also, you've mentioned there, Kara, access. Like you said, they get to go overseas, they get to sit around the kitchen table, so to speak, or the boardroom with these really successful business owners that are willing to talk to them behind the scenes and explain their journey, which just the average Joe doesn't get. I mean, for me, I say doing the podcast, one of the biggest benefits for me is I get to talk to really cool people and meet really cool people that are doing amazing things all the time. So if, again, you think about the next generation, whether it be employees or farm kids coming back into a business, well, then it gives them access to some really cool people and mentors out there that you wouldn't normally get. I mean, that's got to be a big win in itself, doesn't it?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's absolutely critical for our industry to sort of have that peer-to-peer kind of group, and everyone will tell you if you just rock up at the door, you will get the glossy version of how everything happened.
Yep.
And the devil is in the detail, and it is behind scenes, how they got there, and Nuffield allows you in many instances to go there. They often love Nuffield scholars because they ask a lot of questions, and so they're challenged as well. And some of the businesses, they get Nuffield scholars through every year because they love to be challenged as well, and they love the type of questioning and saying, why are you doing it this way? They get knowledge back as much as we do. And that's sort of hard to find where people have a certain level of trust. And that's been built on by the scholars before. Nuffield's now 75 years old. The very first scholars went to the UK for 6 months. They boarded a ship. There was 2 of them each year. They got given a bike in the UK and they travelled round to other farmers that different farmers had put them onto around their topic, and then they brought that back to Australia. And it's grown from there, but many Nuffield scholars now have connections all over the world. For the likes of Tom and Jack, they've used that network. We've had some great people here from overseas that have got in contact via our networks overseas. And I just think it's just such a positive network.
So, Kara, if you were talking to them, say we've talked to the next generation and saying, okay, here's a great opportunity for you to go do something like this. You might be considering uni or one of these types of things, work experience. If you're talking to the mums and dads out there like you and Das, and you're looking at the next generation, I just want to give this context before I ask the question is what we find in succession is about 25 to 30% of the reason they fail is because the next gen hasn't been prepared to lead and communicate, etc. So from your point of view, what's your pitch to the mums and dads out there to say to the next generation, hey, you should probably consider something like this?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I can't understand a parent that wouldn't want or an employer that wouldn't want their staff or children to have that opportunity. When I look at it, I just think, why wouldn't you want them to? I mean, that professional development that is involved in that process, I think it's really good value for money. So I find it hard to think, well, why wouldn't people want to do it? But to sell it to them, I think, well, first of all, to apply and be part of that, you really need to be passionate about agriculture. So if your children and your staff are passionate about agriculture, they are perfect applicants. If they're not and they're not worried about it, well, maybe Nuffield's not for them. But I think getting behind the next generation and giving them that opportunity, your business will grow. You'll be more resilient. It helps on all levels to be able to go and see other businesses that maybe have had the same growth problems or innovation issues, challenges. I just think you'd be crazy not to support a next gen. And it's not just the next gen. You don't have, when we talk generations, you can be, most age groups can apply for Nuffield. And in fact, experience is what we're looking for. So not necessarily academia, although that's very important as well, but it is for farmers that maybe haven't taken the traditional route either.
And so realistically, I look at it this way, Kara. I say, okay, well, most families are saying, how do we develop the next generation? How do we actually get them involved and skilled up? And so these are the sorts of opportunities we like to talk about to be able to go, okay, well, here's an opportunity to skill your next generation up or yourself up, as you and Das did, and then bring that back into the business. And then the ROI is basically this will pay off tenfold.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that we did a lot of before we did Nuffield, and probably to get to that, was the opportunities around short courses for all sorts of things that we needed in the business: nutrition, land management. Nowadays, I see so many opportunities: advancing beef leaders, the Graham Acton Awards, the Xander McDonald Awards, the Lachlan Hughes Foundation. There is just so many opportunities for growth for young people that I think sky's the limit really in what some of the industries are offering. And I would be strongly encouraging your staff, children, etc., to take advantage of that. That's what we are pushing with all our next generation that we mentor, is give those things a crack, because they're really quite some great programs.
And if you're not where you want to be in the industry career-wise or at home, there's probably a reason. And maybe if you go out and spend a bit of time, money and effort on developing yourself and your own personal self and investing in yourself, you might be surprised what comes out of it at the end.
Yes, we've always invested in education. Even in January, I flew to the States to participate in a TPAP course, which was an executive program for US farmers, and we did that via Nuffield, and it was a week in the US talking to essentially a similar program, but a lot around business, a lot about family transitioning and dynamics, geopolitics, all sorts of things. But it's about continuation of learning, challenging what you know, and trying to make improvements. And I think if you've got that mindset, there's opportunity out there for you to take that each year. And just because you've completed a uni degree or you've completed something, you just need to keep pushing yourself to learn something new. It's really good for your brain. It's great for your mindset. I try and challenge my mind all the time to learn new things.
Yeah. Yep. And high performers always perform high because they're always pushing themselves and challenging and learning and being open to new things. So, no, that's great, Kara. And look, as we're coming up towards the end of this, Nuffield obviously has their opening coming up shortly, or their applications close. Can you just give us a few details on when it closes and how people can put an application in or find out more details?
It closes on the 8th of May, so you still have plenty of time, but you need to make a start. And it is at nuffield.com.au. And I think if you just plug in how to apply, there is an application process. If they've got any queries, there's a lot of support there from the Nuffield management. And of course, we can reach out. Each state has Nuffield scholars that really love to help the next ones through the process. A lot of people get caught up on whether they're good enough or, do they have a study topic? And I really just encourage them to put something down that they're really passionate about and to just seek advice. That's part of the journey is coming along and learning to interview, be in front of people, be out of your comfort zone. And it's the same with all those programs. And
give it a crack.
Yeah, I think everyone should give it a crack. But there is only so many spots. It's very competitive. It is a very competitive space, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply. I mean, if I had a thought about it, I probably wasn't the best looking on paper, but I knew what I was studying and I was very passionate about it. And we take, it doesn't have to be as good on paper as what you might think.
Yeah. Awesome. Fantastic. Kara, last question I like to ask people when I get them on the podcast. If you could go back in a time machine and have a cup of coffee, a beer, a rum, whatever it is, with 25-year-old Kara, what's the bit of advice you'd give her?
Oh, well, I think I probably wouldn't have listened. That was probably my biggest problem, is I wouldn't have listened to myself at 25. I was probably getting to where I may have. I was probably 30 before I'd probably listened to the older generation. A couple of the key points that I know now are really important, and that is what we've talked about, sitting with that discomfort and that pain and understanding that that's part of the journey and the process. And every now and then I think, geez, in my younger youth, I probably pulled the trigger a little early. I shot from the hip. I did not probably think some of those things through. And that's part of what I've learned on my journey around what I do. That doesn't mean you shouldn't act. I think you've still got to be decisive. You can't get stuck, and you've always got to be moving forward. I would have said to myself, back myself, but don't back myself into a corner. I think you've got to try and keep your opportunities open. And again, we learned over time to fail often, but fail small. And it was actually another Nuffield scholar, Humpty Doo, Dan Richards, who that's part of their mantra at their business, and they've got a fantastic business in Northern Territory. And it is all about trying new things all the time, but trying to do it small and then forgetting about the ones that don't take off and then really getting on board the innovations that work. And I think if I had known those things a little bit better, I don't know that life would be any different.
Yeah.
But it's always a learning curve, isn't it? And it's still learning. We're still trying new things. And for me, I think that's really important, even as an older person, to create discomfort for yourself. It's very easy to get comfortable and not want to change, not want to adapt, not want to try and work on your mindset and try and look at things differently. And I think that's, maybe 25-year-old Kara, maybe slightly less crazy. I'm not sure.
Well, if you don't fire enough, you're not going to be able to sight the rifle in, are you? So realistically, it's trying to find a little bit of balance there. And I get what you're saying, because I'd say the same. If I went back and talked to 25-year-old Ben, he probably wouldn't have listened too much either. But it's still nice to be able to think, okay, well, what would I recommend the next generation think through a little bit?
And we probably wouldn't have got there if we had a pause and we had some of the things that we've gone and done and pulled off, we may not have done if we'd thought about it too much.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Most business owners say 10 years after they go, Jesus, if I knew what it was when I started, I probably never would have given it a crack.
Yeah, that's right. And so sometimes, not knowing is absolute bliss.
Yeah, no, awesome. Fantastic, Kara. Well, look, that's been amazing. I really appreciate that today. We'll put all those details in the show notes, and really good to have you on the program, and look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Kara's got a really good story there, and I think it's a great introduction to how important preparing the next generation to be leaders in not only the agricultural industry, but also your business. And I think I just want to really hammer home that statistic I mentioned halfway through about 25% of the reasons that most transitions from one generation to another fail at is because of the lack of preparation of the next generation. So this is a great example of how if you want to be successful when it comes to succession or intergenerationally, you've really got to focus on preparing the next generation and finding something to improve your knowledge, to improve your thinking, and also to improve your tribe. This could be a great step for you. Now, if you think there's another family out there that would benefit from this episode, I'd love for you to share it with them. And until next time, I'm Ben Law, I'm the Financial Bloke, and remember, it's more important who you are than what you've got.
Today's episode is brought to you by Morrissey & Co. Morrissey & Co. has been trusted by Australian cattle producers for livestock handling solutions since 1910. For generations, the family-owned business has stood for craftsmanship, quality and reliability because life on the land demands the tools that endure. Every piece of equipment is built tough, designed to make your work safer and more efficient. Crafted for today, enduring for tomorrow. Want to know more? Head on over to www.morrisseyco.com.au or call 07 4668 5317.